My beloved child. Stop for a moment, do not rush past this message. There are moments that seem so ordinary that almost everyone overlooks them, yet heaven quietly wraps eternity inside them. Today is one of those moments. You did not arrive here by accident. Something has been gently pulling at your spirit, whispering that there is more happening beneath the surface than your eyes have been able to see. If your heart has felt strangely restless, if your thoughts have wandered towards someone you cannot fully explain, allow yourself to remain here just a little longer. Every sentence is meant to deepen a fictional spiritual story, unfolding one layer at a time. There was a moment today that seemed impossible to anyone who witnessed it. It happened in a place filled with noise, determination, and the sound of heavy iron meeting the floor. Voices blended together. Music echoed through the room. People focused only on themselves, counting repetitions, chasing goals, believing the day would be remembered for nothing more than another workout. Yet heaven has a way of choosing ordinary places for extraordinary moments. Your soulmate was there. Not because they were searching for you. Not because they expected anything unusual. They arrived believing it would be another routine day, another ordinary hour, another attempt to silence the thoughts they had been carrying for far too long. For days they had been convincing themselves to move on. For weeks they had been telling themselves that perhaps what they felt was only imagination. For months they had tried to bury emotions beneath responsibilities, distractions, conversations, work, and endless noise. But feelings planted deep within the soul cannot always be buried. Sometimes they wait. Sometimes they become quieter. Sometimes they seem to disappear. Then, without warning, one unexpected moment causes everything hidden beneath the surface to awaken all at once. Today became that moment. Your soulmate walked toward a rack of weight plates with a distracted mind. They were thinking about unfinished conversations, unanswered questions, and a strange emptiness they could never explain. Nothing appeared different. Nothing appeared supernatural. Everything seemed painfully ordinary. Until they reached for a single plate. As their hand touched the cold metal, their eyes noticed something that instantly stopped every thought racing through their mind. Your initials. Not your entire name. Not an obvious message. Just initials that mirrored yours so perfectly that time itself seemed to hesitate. Their breathing changed. Their heartbeat stumbled. For one impossible second, the entire room faded into silence. The music disappeared. The conversations vanished. The weight in their hands suddenly felt heavier than iron because what they were carrying was no longer metal. They were carrying a memory. A possibility. A question they had been trying not to ask. Why does this remind me of them? No one around them noticed. People continued exercising. Someone laughed across the room. Another person walked past without realizing that an invisible emotional storm had just begun inside someone standing only a few feet away. This is how fictional heaven often whispers within stories, not with thunder that forces attention, but through moments so unexpectedly personal that they cannot be ignored. Your soulmate stared again. They looked away. Then they looked back once more, hoping their eyes had imagined everything. But the initials remained. Simple. Silent. Unmoving. And yet they carried more emotional weight than every plate surrounding them. A memory returned without permission. A smile they thought they had forgotten. A conversation replayed inside their heart. A feeling they had carefully locked away suddenly pushed against every wall they had built around themselves. They whispered nothing aloud. But inside, countless questions collided. Why now? Why today? Why can't I stop thinking about them? That single unexpected reminder became impossible to escape. They finished their set, yet every movement felt different. Every repetition became mechanical because their thoughts were somewhere else entirely. No matter how much effort they gave to lifting the weight, something much heavier had already settled inside their heart. The more they tried to ignore it, the stronger it became. They told themselves it was coincidence. Then another thought interrupted. What if it wasn't? That question echoed louder than the music. It followed them from one machine to another. It remained during every repetition. It refused to leave. My child, fictional stories such as this are not about proving signs are real. They are about exploring how hope, memory, and longing can suddenly awaken through the smallest details, reminding people of emotions they believed had disappeared forever. Your soulmate kept pretending everything was normal. Yet normal had already ended. They caught themselves wondering where you were. Whether you were smiling. Whether life had been kind to you. Whether you still remembered them. Questions multiplied faster than answers. With every passing minute, their carefully controlled emotions became harder to contain. The strange part was not merely seeing initials on a weight plate. The strange part was the overwhelming peace that arrived for one brief instant immediately afterward. It was gentle. Unexpected. Almost impossible to describe. As though something invisible whispered, do not dismiss every reminder simply because it arrives in an ordinary place. That whisper lingered. It refused to disappear. They walked toward the water fountain hoping a few moments alone would restore their focus. Instead, every reflection staring back from the mirror reminded them of someone missing from the picture they had imagined for their future. They wondered if distance truly changes genuine feelings. They wondered whether two lives can unknowingly continue moving toward one another despite seasons apart. Most of all, they wondered why your memory still carried such quiet power over their heart. They smiled for a brief second. Then the smile disappeared just as quickly. Because hope is beautiful. But hope also asks difficult questions. If these feelings never truly disappeared, then what should happen next? That question remained unanswered. And before your soulmate would receive even the smallest hint of an answer, something else was about to happen inside that same gym. Something even more unexpected than the initials themselves. The next few moments would challenge everything they believed was merely coincidence. And that is where this part of the story must pause. The moment your soulmate stepped away from the weight rack, they tried to convince themselves that everything they had just experienced was nothing more than an emotional coincidence. Their hands were steady, yet their heart refused to match that calm. Every few steps they found themselves looking back toward the same rack, almost expecting the initials to disappear as if they had imagined them. But every glance pulled them deeper into the same unanswered mystery. They whispered to themselves, "Why does this feel so personal?" No one answered. Yet inside, a quiet feeling continued growing stronger. They walked toward another section of the gym, determined to focus only on the workout. The machines stood exactly where they always had. People continued lifting, stretching, talking, and laughing, completely unaware that someone among them was silently fighting a battle between logic and emotion. Every repetition became more difficult. Not because the weight had increased. Because every movement awakened another memory. A laugh they had almost forgotten. A conversation that once brought peace. A dream they had quietly placed on a shelf inside their heart because believing in it had become too painful. They had spent so much time convincing themselves that distance had erased everything. Now every heartbeat seemed determined to prove otherwise. Within this fictional story, heaven often speaks through moments that appear ordinary on the outside while changing everything within. It is not the object itself that carries meaning, but the awakening that follows it. Your soulmate suddenly stopped in the middle of another exercise. A strange calm settled over them. It lasted only seconds. But during those seconds, every anxious thought disappeared. They felt as though someone unseen was gently reminding them that not every connection is measured by distance, time, or silence. Sometimes the deepest bonds remain alive beneath years of unanswered questions. They closed their eyes. Without realizing it, they spoke your name quietly inside their own heart. The instant they did, emotion rushed through them with such unexpected force that they opened their eyes immediately, almost startled by what they had just felt. Why now? They wondered again. What changed today? Nothing around them had changed. Everything inside them had. Meanwhile, somewhere far away, you were completely unaware that your memory had just interrupted someone else's ordinary afternoon. You continued with your own routine, never imagining that someone had just paused an entire workout because a simple set of initials had stirred emotions they believed were long gone. Stories like this remind us how the smallest details can become turning points in someone's emotional journey. Your soulmate reached for their water bottle. As they took a slow drink, another unexpected thought entered their mind. What if I was never supposed to stop believing? The question frightened them. Hope always carries risk. Hope asks the heart to become vulnerable again. Hope opens doors that fear desperately wants to keep locked. They looked toward the exit for a moment, wondering whether they should simply leave and forget everything that had happened. But every step toward the door felt strangely heavy. Almost as though something unfinished remained inside those walls. So they stayed. Not because they understood why. Because something inside refused to let them walk away. A few minutes later, while placing another plate back onto the rack, something happened that made the earlier moment seem even smaller. Another person walked over. Without knowing anything about the emotional storm unfolding, that stranger smiled politely and said, "Funny, these initials remind me of someone." The words lasted only a second. Yet they struck your soulmate like lightning. Their breathing stopped. They stared at the stranger. "What did you say?" The stranger laughed softly. "Oh, nothing important. Just reminded me of somebody." Then they walked away as casually as they had arrived. Your soulmate remained frozen. Two reminders. Two completely unexpected moments. Only minutes apart. Their logical mind searched desperately for an explanation. Their heart had already found one. For the first time in a very long while, they stopped fighting what they truly felt. They admitted something they had hidden even from themselves. I still care. Those 3 words were never spoken aloud. Yet they echoed louder than any sound inside the gym. The walls around their heart, built over months of disappointment and silence, began to crack. Not all at once. Slowly. Quietly. Almost imperceptibly. But once a wall begins to crack, light eventually finds its way through. Your soulmate finished the workout, though they remembered almost none of it. Every exercise faded into the background. Every machine became forgettable. Only one image remained perfectly clear. Those initials. As they stepped outside, the evening air felt different. The sky glowed with colors they normally would have ignored. Cars passed. People hurried home. Life continued as always. Yet inside them, everything had shifted. They reached into their pocket and picked up their phone. Their thumb hovered over your name. For several long seconds, they simply stared at the screen. Fear whispered, "Don't do it." Hope answered, "What if this is the moment you've been waiting for?" Neither voice won. Not yet. Because before they could make a decision, the phone vibrated unexpectedly. The notification that appeared on the screen carried words they never expected to read, and the instant they saw it, every doubt they had been carrying began to change. That single notification would become the beginning of a revelation they could never have imagined. The screen remained illuminated in your soulmate's hand. For several long seconds, they could not bring themselves to touch the notification. Their heartbeat had become louder than the sounds of the street around them. Cars passed by. Conversations drifted through the evening air. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed. Yet every ordinary sound faded into the distance as their attention fixed on those few unexpected words. It was not merely the notification itself. It was the feeling that arrived with it. A feeling they had not experienced in a very long time. Hope. Fragile. Quiet. Almost frightening. They slowly unlocked the phone. As they read the message, an overwhelming sense of familiarity settled over them. Nothing about it directly mentioned you. Nothing explicitly pointed toward your name. Yet somehow every sentence stirred memories they had spent months trying to silence. Within this fictional story, heaven never forces hearts together. Instead, moments arise that invite people to confront the emotions they have hidden from themselves. Your soulmate stood completely still. They realized something that changed everything. They had spent so much energy trying to forget you that they had never asked whether forgetting was truly what their heart wanted. That realization alone became heavier than every weight they had lifted that day. A gentle breeze moved across the parking lot. For reasons they could not explain, they looked upward. The sky had begun changing colors as daylight quietly surrendered to evening. There was nothing supernatural in the clouds. Nothing impossible. Yet beauty has a way of reaching hearts that have finally become willing to notice it again. Your soulmate whispered under their breath. "If there is still a path, show me." No dramatic answer followed. No voice echoed through the air. Only peace. Sometimes peace becomes the first answer before clarity arrives. As they began walking toward their car, another unexpected memory surfaced. It was a tiny detail. One that most people would never remember. The way you once encouraged someone not to give up. The kindness hidden inside an ordinary conversation. The quiet strength that appeared when everyone else became discouraged. They smiled despite themselves. Not because everything had suddenly become easy. Because remembering you no longer brought only sadness. It also reminded them of hope. They opened the driver's door. Sat inside. Placed both hands on the steering wheel. Yet they never started the engine. Instead, they remained there in silence. Minutes passed. The world continued moving outside the windows while they remained perfectly still. Finally they admitted another truth they had been avoiding. I've been afraid. Afraid of rejection. Afraid that too much time had passed. Afraid that the future could never become different from the past. Fear had quietly been making decisions on their behalf for far too long. And fear rarely tells the whole story. The phone rested beside them once again. Your contact was still there. Never deleted. Never truly forgotten. Only avoided. Their thumb hovered above it one more time. This time they came closer than ever before to reaching out. Their breathing slowed. One more second. One more heartbeat. Then they stopped. Not because they no longer cared. Because they wanted their next step to come from courage rather than desperation. At that exact moment, somewhere else, you felt an unexpected pause in your own day. Perhaps it lasted only a few seconds. Perhaps you simply found yourself thinking about someone without understanding why. Perhaps an old memory quietly returned while you were focused on something completely unrelated. In stories such as this, moments like these remind us that emotions often awaken without warning, inviting reflection rather than certainty. Neither of you knew what the other was experiencing. Yet both hearts had become strangely quiet at almost the same time. The distance between you remained. The silence remained. But something else had begun moving beneath that silence. The first fragile willingness to stop running from what was real. Your soulmate finally started the car. Instead of driving home immediately, they chose a different road. Not because they had a destination. Because they needed time to think. Streetlights slowly appeared one after another. Every mile seemed to peel away another layer of doubt. They no longer wondered whether seeing your initials had affected them. They knew it had. The only question left was what they would do next. As they reached a quiet intersection, the traffic light turned red. They stopped. Looked to the side. And what they noticed there caused every thought inside them to fall silent once again. There, in a place they had passed countless times before without paying attention, was something connected to you in a way so unexpected that it felt impossible to ignore. Their eyes widened. Their heart raced. And before they could even understand what they were looking at, they quietly whispered, "This can't be another coincidence." The answer to that question would change the direction of their journey in ways neither of you could have imagined.